What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? We have a very special guest with us here today. Her name is Katerina Odarchenko. She is the founder and CEO of SIC Group, a political consulting and PR firm based in Ukraine, the United States, including Washington, D.C. specifically, and Central Asia. So, hey, how are you, Katerina? How are you doing today?
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for your initiative and for your work with this podcast. So it's really valuable.
So, thank you so much for being here. And are you calling from Ukraine or DC or maybe somewhere else even?
No, I'm generally on Capitol Hill now, so I'm based in DC now.
Okay, here in
Yeah,
DC.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
nice.
Here
Um,
not so busy because it's Monday, so it's good that we have time for communication, right?
Yeah, right. Have you ever been to DuPont Circle in DC?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Okay, okay. I really like
Yeah,
that area.
yeah. A lot of restaurants and all this prayer breakfast stuff there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah,
it's nice architecture and it's nice.
right, right.
Um, I just want to say, like right off the bat, there was this video when I was doing research, from a while ago that you posted, giving a little bit of business advice and just mindset advice, where you mentioned working 6 days a week rather than the five, and staying motivated when you do have a success, staying motivated and not getting too comfortable and not taking half a year off, for example. So I really like that, and I'm excited to get more advice from you and more info from you. So yeah, that was
Yeah,
really
sure, sure. So like I'm Jewish, so in Jewish tradition, we don't work from Friday evening till like Saturday evening. So, and it's really interesting because first of all, it's worked more than 3,000 years, and if something worked more than 3,000 years, maybe it's some right point. But in nowadays in digital area, when if you have business, you generally work all the time because you all the time have your laptop or your iPhone or something like that. It's very important to generally really not work one day. So what is not work? I mean, to not to text in iPhone, not to watch like silly TV shows, right? But to read books, to be with kids, to communicate with people, to talk to somebody, and this really gives to you like motivation, and it gives to you more clear mind, which very important because sometimes when you're busy like clients, then like some other stuff and development stuff and travels, you can't also focus. And in other practices it's called like digital methods, but people usually do it like, okay, I will go to some islands and will drink drinks all week, and it will be digital detox. As for me, it's better to take one day every week, but it's just my solution, but it's not my invention.
right. I love that.
Mm, mm,
So currently, you're the founder of SIC Group and the
mm,
president of Polita Institute for Democracy and Development.
mm.
But can you give us a little bit of your story before, joining these current roles, and maybe tell us what you studied in school and how you became a political consultant?
Yeah, sure. So my story is pretty understandable because my father, he is businessman from Ukraine, so he started like from development business. When Soviet Union like go down, it was pretty tough work to build business, and after like this business work, he became politician. So he started to support pro-Western political forces in Ukraine when it was like Orange Revolution. So it was revolution for pro-European choice against like pro-Russian, pro-Soviet Union choice. And from that period, so he started to be politically active 2002. And of course, like people support this idea because European Union is more values, right? And like people want to have Western reintegration. So that's why he was elected several times to parliament. And of course, I see, all these processes from, like very young years. So my first bachelor degree originally was in science. So because I was like in school, worldwide champion in biology. So my first degree is biology genetics, but after that I'm generally take one more education, which was bachelor in law and master in public administration. And it was opportunity also in Ukraine to get like course from George Washington University. So one professor came and they organized some program which was like for Ukraine and Moldova and Georgia, as I remember. So it was like not graduate program, but like additional certified program, which was very useful because it mostly was about political strategy and other stuff. So that's why generally I started to work, with like members from local council from my native region, Kherson. So very very basic work for like people who work in local council, like communication, like some works in their like community places. And after that, like we start to do a lot of digital work, which was very progressive in that period of time, social media only start to like develop in Eastern Europe. And then we start to, to work more with like strategy with the best political managers in Tymoshenko team. She was politician in Ukraine, very popular. Like she was prime minister, and she was like in prison because of as political prisoner when like was pro-Russian President Yanukovych in Ukraine. So it was a lot of work on campaigning against, this like political pressure. And after that, we generally create like SSC group because we have like 3 partners, almost like professionals in political science, and we do classical election work. After that, one partner go to work with Japanese people originally, and other partner he go to work to Central Election Commission as employee. So like but I decided to develop not only like political management services but also government relations services when it's like not election, and PR services because it's still pretty connected like vector. And after that, when we developed, we start to do the same services for for other Eastern European countries, like Bulgaria, like Moldova, which generally is the same mentality of people, and Eastern and Central Asia, like Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, and pretty specific market, but still, and also represent like clients from Eastern Europe and Central Asia in international media communication and lobbying in the United States. And we became one of the biggest companies in Ukraine for sure, with the biggest clients, and not so big but very perspective in the United States. When war started, our team like separate between several countries, not because of situation, in Ukraine. And we a little bit changed model, so we start to work more on elections here in the United States. Now it's not huge projects, but interesting projects with like PR work with American firms, and also like on elections work like organizing teams for canvassing, phone banking, also digital campaigns, and a lot of not big projects on advocacy, branding, PR work, working with press releases, speaking journalists, brand management. So it's hard to like moving through all these changes, right? But we're still moving on, and we're also proud partners of International Government Relations Forum and International Campaign Management Forum, which our firm sponsored every year. And for International Government Relations Forum, we do this 9 years. So this year will be 9th International Government Relations Forum, which connect like people from Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and American partners, but it's also a lot of British people, a lot of Canadian people also join. So it's real international experience. So it's our niche. We have good team. We move through challenges, but still, I think we're doing great. Yeah, and thank you to all people from SSC Group team to this move.
Nice. And you also speak at the Kyiv International Economic Forum. Right. How did you know that public speaking was for you originally? And, did you how did you train for it? Like, do you have any tips for people who struggle with public speaking, getting over that nervousness aspect, especially?
Uh, I think that every person has some talent from childhood. I have three kids, so I see that like even from my kids, they have totally different talent, right? And totally different, like it's you can see it from childhood. So I think that I generally, for me, it's easy because I started public speaking even like at school. So I was president of school, like and like MC of all school events. So for me, it's easy. But also, I also work with coach for public speaking when I go to a lot of TV shows because it's specific type of working with camera and also specific type of working with like tough questions, right? Yeah, and of course with like tone of your voice and no, which is also very important, and with image makers. And my firm generally work with political leaders, so we have like standard package for candidates, which included usually image making and public speaking courses. So what is main tips to do that? I think maybe it's interesting term for public lecture, and I definitely will think about that. But basically, it's to understand your issue, because when person understands issue very deeply and really passionate about that, it's generally no problem with like public speaking. Of course, some people have extremes, like it's phobia, right? So it's like more hard issues, but we don't take that. We take like that you must be passionate. Secondly, if you like not so often like do the speeches, it's better to prepare in advance and to do some slides and notes and papers, like first part, second, third part. And now it's much more easy because you can do it in your like iPhone, like no problem, and you can do it also interactive. So even when you like plan this speech, you can do like 5 keynotes slides and also add visualize to that. Fourth issue, I think it's psychological issues with like capsules of positive emotion, where you try to remember some positive issue and to follow up your mood to this like positive points in your life and points of your success. It also help you psychologically. If you even have a little phobia, it's very good to do physical training before. Also like training with push-ups, because it take off all tremor from your like your hands. And if you anyway have that, it's better to take something in your hands, maybe pen or something, because it's also will help you like to concentrate and take points. But if you're nervous, you always can like fight it, and it will look very organically. And the last, my advice is to know hero's journey and basic understanding of audience and of your archetype. What I mean, your story must be interesting. Now, I will give you example. Nobody interested in story of like person who, was like son in rich family, and then this rich family pay for good college, and then like this guy organized law firm, and then he decided to became like member of local council. It's not interesting, right? It's like classical. But if we will build the same story in classical hero journey, so it's originally model on what all scenarios work. Mr. Wogler wrote a lot of books about that. But generally, your journey will show all your challenges. Like, for example, okay, this guy was from like rich family, but father never was with him, right? Or he was from rich family, but when was like economical crisis, they take a lot of like loans which they can't pay, and they go to bankruptcy. Or this guy had his love in college, and she had like some disease, and it was like sad story. Or this guy like help to some refugees, and it motivates him to go to public policy and to change like some programs for refugees on like state level. So it became more interesting. So you always, and you can build the story even for your everyday life. Like it's also some like hack for you how to pay attention to audience, to generally your story, your product, or like your company. And it's very algorithmic. So if you know all these tips, you can build right story. That's why main so Wogler and Campbell, they was main consultants for a lot of filmmakers and also on Star Wars making, and all people like Star Wars. So it's my tips for people who have problems with that. And I think it's really important that maybe we need to do more public lectures from Institute for Democracy and Development about that for young politicians and young entrepreneurs.
Okay. And how are, in terms of politics, how are the political tensions between Russian politicians and Ukrainian politicians? Is there still a lot of interaction, or how is it?
No, generally it was some, no, for people who not so like in Slavic studies. Generally, as you remember, it was like Soviet Union in the region, right? And all American Slavic studies, they like pay attention to research on Russian studies. Generally, they research Soviet Union, right? Because it was, Cold War and other stuff. After that, when Ukraine gets independence, generally people who was in parliament, it was also people from Communist Party or people who can build business. So they called like red CEOs or pink CEOs because they come from the same system. And people still have paternalistic understanding that somebody in charge of their life. It's going through Tsar period, then to period of Soviet Union, and also it wasn't like diversity because Soviet Union, as you remember, also killed all cultural and religious diversity. And kill, I mean, sometimes physically kill. So even like rabbis who like make matzah for Pesach, it's like Jewish holidays, they can go to jail for that because it was like not restricted to religious practices. The same with Muslim people who try to do circumcision for their kids, and the same for also like Orthodox churches, baptizing and so on and so forth. So it's moving like the same because people still was under aftershock of falling down Soviet Union. But in 2000s, people start to think, look, we now can travel to European Union and people live better there, they have normal hospitals, they have good roads, their schools work well. It's like social justice there, some states is welfare state. So maybe like being and trading with Russia, it's not the right choice because there are like corruption and, oligarchs, but other people live for $100 a month and they live from their gardens. And from 2000s, like it became big polarization between pro-European political forces and like pro-Russian political forces. And Russia gave a lot of money to pro-Russian political forces. No, I mean, they give from $100 million to every pro-Russian political forces in cash for their election campaign, minimum. So it was a lot of investments and also investment to direct bribes to voters. That's why they have some support, and they also manipulate on nostalgia of Soviet Union because some people live not bad in Soviet Union. No, I mean what mean no not bad. So they have like their apartment from country, and they said that ice cream in Soviet Union was better. But it's connected with nostalgia because they was like young people. But now it's totally no communication because generally people who communicate with Russia and who take their money, they under sanctions in Ukraine, and mostly of figures like pro-Russian politicians then under United States sanctions, like Mr. Medvedchuk. So that's why now it's no communication. it's communication like on agents level.
Mm,
So, but it's still some influence of Russia, of course, in Ukraine, and it's huge influence of Russia in Georgia now. Uh, a little less in Moldova, but they try to push their influence to political system in European Union through elections in some direct countries. For example, in Serbia and in Hungary, it's still huge political influence. So they also move their like pro-Russian candidates to European Parliament. And
mm.
the same in Germany, like Alternative for Germany. So unfortunately, they also pretty professional in their work. I mean, Russia.
Hmm. And Putin recently declared the United States an official enemy. How do you think that will impact or escalate the situation?
Oh, I think he always do that because he generally all his like campaigning was like on the message that be part of polar world and it's Russia exists and United States exists. Now
Mm,
all understand that China potentially part of polar world, not Russia. So budget of Russia it's less than budget of Texas, like one state in the United States. So we can't compare even Russia with one like top American company, right? Uh, I don't tell about Amazon. I tell about like some like pretty moderate companies. So that's why like now, but Putin still try to put to his voters, to his base, that he still have this influence. But look to numbers. Yeah, they have like nuclear button, but like one state of United States produce more money than all huge Russia. So, but that's why he pushed this idea only for like voters inside the country. And you must understand that mostly his base is people who never go from their like village area. So they can't compare how people live in like United States. And I will give you one example. You know, I do Facebook video. Very simple issue. How teacher who like generally teach in public schools live in Maryland and how teacher live in Russia, in Bryansk, Russia. And people, and it's a lot of like bots said that, oh, it's not true. This teacher carried mortgage, so he in like lawn slavery, right? And I showed just general like area in Maryland where like teachers live and how like public infrastructure looks like. And but some people, it was real people who really said that no, in Russia, in United States, all people in law and slavery, so they was work a lot without any like weekends, and it's also a lot of like drug addicted people because they have one photo from no one street in Philadelphia, and they use it in their propaganda. So it's also like very good organized central propaganda, which really works for, on my understanding, around 30% of voters in Russia. And the other percentage of people just don't want to die for their political views.
mm. I saw another one of your videos on disinformation and like fake news coming out of Russia. And nowadays with modern technology, how do you think that's affecting their power and how easily they can spread this propaganda? Because on one hand, their technology is more advanced, so it's easier for them to make fake videos or fake pictures, but also it's like people on the internet can all kind of discredit this fake information and everyone has access to the internet and social media.
Look, they work a little like, so first of all, we must understand that their base and also base of political parties who vote for Alternative for Germany in Germany, or who was voted for like pizza in Serbia, or who support Orban. It's or far right like people here in the United States. It's generally not very educated people, so they don't like used to find sources, right? Or They just interested, for example, in vaccination on COVID, and they believe in some issues. So Russian take this issue that some people believe that like they don't need COVID vaccination. Okay, it's their position, like need or don't need. But then Russia they see like search Google Trends, and they put to websites which look like normal websites. So for example, it can be like Time magazine, but they can create Time USA Time .us.org, something like that, right? And they originally moved like their propaganda through like these websites that, like, Professor like Ivanov said that you don't need vaccination, and if like some political party in the United States try to, I don't know, give money to insurance companies because it's like worldwide evil, and these far right people like to believe in that. And generally, when they like believe in that, they also read this information and their friends share this information. So it's general, and people who understand how it works, like in different way. They don't read this news. They read like Washington Post, or they read the Times, or they read like Deutsche Welle. So something where professional journalists work. And I think that now Russians very effective in this because they connect social media plus their opinion leaders, plus they pay to people to do some demonstrations. They do it a lot in Germany, and they also sometimes give direct money to politicians. One more time, you can like give example. You can give example of alternative for Germany political party and like scandals of potential their frauds with like Russian money. So we can do any allegation, but still a lot of journalists wrote about that. The same with Marine Le Pen in France. So it's pretty standard algorithm. But if it's in France, it's like harder. Work in some African countries or in Moldova, it's much easier because also people very poor and they try to see some solutions for their problems through some understanding, that somebody will come and give money to them. Like for African people, Russians said that, hey, work with Russians and with Chinese because they respect you. And like Western people, they don't respect you. They like neo-colonial regimes, right? And some like African regimes said that, oh yeah, Putin is a great leader because he respects us. So he take one message and he repack this message, and they pretty effective in repacking that, and their stories look like true because basically they also can take one fact and then just change context of this fact, right? So I can be more shorter in my answer if you
So for people watching at home, is there any way that you would recommend for people to be able to tell if a video or a article is coming from a legitimate source or if it's not credible?
No, first of all, you must understand the source, and you must understand if somebody from like fake accounts like posted in different groups. It's also very understanding that if it's fake account, it's not so much friends, no photo, not so much, it's only repost, but not original post. So because generally in Russia, they have corruption everywhere. So they also have corruption with digital campaigning. So sometimes they do it pretty not effective and, it's the most cheaper contractors. And of course, usually if it's like expert or journalist, like, I don't know, Mr. Green, we must Google on other articles on Mr. Green. And if you're not sure that Mr. Green generally exists, it's a question. But one more time, now it's enough. I think it's enough sources and bloggers who have their names, and if you like conservative, you can read more conservative. If you like more liberal, you can read more liberal positions. But I think it's enough of basic sources of different style, which you can like read and rely, because generally it's like media corporation or it's some person who have their expertise. So for example, if I have my expertise, I do some YouTube video on my expertise, and you can generally go to internet and saw my previous position for last like 10 years, right? But generally, like recipients of that disinformation don't do that, because they just believe what they want to believe. And it's very different model of, communication.
And you do a lot of political consulting work in both Europe and in Washington, D.C. What are the biggest differences in the politics in Europe versus America?
Um, I must tell that it's also big difference between like policies in Eastern Europe and like Western Europe, because you can't compare Bulgaria with Germany, right? And you even can't compare Bulgaria with Lithuania. So it really depends what you're doing. So you're interested in like elections inside countries, or you're more interested in like European Union elections, or just in portraits of candidates? So can you more clarify? And that's why I can be more shorter. Yeah.
More probably for elections within countries, similarly to kind of like how when we elect politicians here, I guess how that whole process goes, how their
Okay.
campaign process goes.
Okay, so let's start with what is the same. So the same process that everybody like pay for pools, for research, in every country the same. Then strategy. So generally every serious politician do strategy, but in Eastern Europe, people think the strategy is not important, because they usually big businessmen and they understand, oh, I know better. I don't need any strategy. The strategy guys just take my money for presentation. It's some difference. Then also on methods of campaigning, it's a lot of differences, because it's also a lot of different laws and regulations. So for example, it's more regulation on advertising in Germany than in Bulgaria, right? So, and it's totally big difference between countries who is not in European Union and who is in European Union. So for example, in Ukraine, it's still pretty wild market, and in Moldova and in Georgia, because a lot of influence, a lot of oligarchs influence. It's also big difference, because in countries who like developing democracies, right? It's a lot of influence of big business, or people said this like in Eastern Europe, these people called oligarchs. So it's people who generally own big business. So to compare, like general person can have like salary $400 a month, and these guys have like $400 million on the official, right? So to understand, and they also own media, and they the biggest donors of political parties, and they also own influence, for example, to agriculture or to steel production, where 100,000 people work. So generally, these guys main clients, for political management, and politicians have less role. So they're generally like employees of these guys, right? And it's very typical for like, it was more typical for Ukraine. Now it's some change because more cooperation in the United States. It's very typical for Georgia. It's generally in Kazakhstan and Central Asia is more like president's family. You can read about Nazarbayev's family. So it's like they in politics, but they also oligarchs. In Europe, in small countries, they haven't that, because like Lithuania, it's small, Estonia, it's small country. So they are real like political competition. And of course, like lobbying in the United States and situation, this fundraising make this political fundraising very different in United States. So main issue that in Eastern Europe, it's mostly big businessmen support politicians, or big businessmen became politicians, like in Czech Republic. In United States, you do real fundraising, and we have correlation with like real fundraising. Other stuff, when you like find money, it's also pretty the same, because it's canvassing, it's phone banking, and it's the same everywhere, like field communication. So canvassing, texting, phone banking, it's pretty the same. And media communications, it's a little bit different one more time, because we are press searching for interesting story. And in countries which develop democracies, you must pay a lot, and generally some media ready to publish even not very reliable information if you pay a lot, or if oligarch owns this like media. In Kazakhstan, it's government owns like media a lot, so you can criticize power there very much. So it's more specific. In the United States, it's a little different. And the main difference is result, because in Kazakhstan, only Central Election Commission and Administration of President really give the result, because it's totally falsification, right? Yeah, and in Eastern Europe, it depends, because now political party also try to do, the same time counting and to control this falsification, but it still happens sometimes. And in Europe, it's more, classical campaign than, like political party who win, it's to win. And the same, we have polarization all over the world. So now politicians more polarizing, and and people also support nationalists, like political forces in Europe, which creepy for me, even what's happened in Germany. And you have the same in United States. I think it's also because of social media and personal content, because sometimes people just don't know position of other party, right? And as for me, it's not the best like trend in political management nowadays, but we still have that.
Hmm. And from more of the entrepreneurship perspective, what are the main differences that you've noticed in starting a business in Russia versus the United States?
No, I never started business in Russia, so I have business in Ukraine.
Oh,
And we have we never worked with Russia, so because we started to work when it's after revolution of dignity. So mostly our clients, it's pro-European clients, and also in Europe when we work with Georgians, it's like pro-European Georgians. When we work with Moldovians, it's pro-European Moldovians. When we work with Bulgarians, our client is pro-European Bulgarians. They also our clients, because pro-Russian political forces usually don't need classical political management. They want to give bribes to voters and count these voters to like take money or presents. It exists, right? Business very different, not in question of registration, but in questions of client relationships. So in all Eastern Europe, you generally can know one big client, and one big client will give to you two for their friends, big clients. And these people very direct and very tough. So they're not polite. They usually from like big business or donors or politicians who came from big business. So it's very tough guys. They don't buy anything for long term. So if they need like organizing of elections campaign, you work 4 months and that's it. You don't work after. If Kazakhs need like creating oppositional political force, we create that. They try to register, power say no, so they don't work more. So it's more short-term contract. In the United States, it's more potential clients. It's not so emotional related. So you must not be so understandable as a person to clients than in Eastern Europe. But first, it's much more paperwork. It's much more, much longer like compliance procedures. But also it's long-term contract. We also hold some government relations contracts for American companies to work in Ukraine, and it's very stable long-term contract, and it's better. But one more time, there are short terms, bigger work, and also sometimes big projects, but it's anti-crisis projects. So you really need to do it for like 2 weeks, right?
Okay.
And like Western people never do that. So it's one time of like negotiations, it's your reputation more important, your media work more important, your corporate social responsibility more important, your background more important. But like if you start to work, it's long-term work, which is nice. But anyway, in political management and government relations, I think it's anyway much more harder to work when you not grew up in this area, to work in this area, right? But anyway, it's possible.
Okay. And do you have any suggestions to work with a team internationally like yours?
Oh, it's very hard. So no, generally you must use a lot of like management app. We use Asana, for example. You can use any of them. Secondly, like it's also very important to put people to the teams together with like different archetypes. So some people, for example, our designers and creative team, they can work together, but they will be not in timing. If somebody like from management team with other architect will say that, hey guys, let's move, we have like a deadline, because otherwise they will form this like creative concept for so long that other clients generally don't will like pay for that, right? And won't pay for that. So that's why it's generally hard, because it's also different time zones. So that's why firstly we work with the same teams like internationally. But after that we form also regional team, because working from like United States to Kazakhstan, it's always impossible, because when you have morning here, they have evening there. So even you can't like normally contact this client, or you must like do it at 5 a.m. in the morning. So that's why we give more opportunities, and generally more, not only salary, but also result oriented like percentage to our people in the regions. So generally we give more opportunities for them to contact directly with clients, like we do in Kazakhstan, in Poland, and we have basic team where we need to do physical work, like in Brussels, where a lot of physical work, like with European Parliament, and we do government relations work, or working with media in European Union. And secondly, the same here in Washington, D.C., because here you physically must do a lot of work, and so it's challenging, and it's needs a lot of like organizing work. Hence it's hard to do like management work and this organizing work. But anyway, it's interesting, because people from different cultures, and you maybe in future you can write like book about cultural map, right? Because cultural map here are like pretty important.
Yeah. So so touching back to the working 6 days a week,
Yeah.
how do do you have any suggestions for entrepreneurs, and especially at that 4 to 5 year mark, of how to stay motivated if you're kind of, you're doing okay, but you haven't reached a point where anything's starting to take off? How do you stick with it?
It's very good question. So I see that it generally we also can take from like Jewish culture that every 7th year, it's year when you have a result of something. So this is an example on crops, but anyway, I see that in business structures, when you build something also like from 5 till 6 years, it gives to you stable result. I will give you an example. We developed completely new market in Ukraine and Kazakhstan of government relations practices. So when we start develop that, nobody understands what is GR. So people said that GR, it's something like HR or PR. It's also two letters. So like, what is it? And why GR? It's like not corruption, but it's direct like dialogue, right? Why we need to vote for law about lobbying. And it takes 5 years to move like this movement to direct like big clients in these services, to take like Ukraine International Airlines to like, do this work, or some like big infrastructure clients, right? So I think that it's also important, like every like from 5 to 7 years to give new growth. So for us, it's created organically because of like, unstable region. We must to move to all our resources to directly different region. So that's why it gives to us, new tasks. And for our team, it was organically. But I understand what you're talking about because like my husband worked with blockchain, right? And like it was pretty new, right, in some period of time, but now it's like very stable and it's not interesting anymore so much. It's completely different sector, right? But they have the same cycles that it's boring. It gives you some money, but maybe not so much as you want. So you need to develop like new vector, or you can like work with new type of clients. For example, new markets or new type of clients. No, I mean, for example, you do PR work mostly for politicians, but now I also do a lot of PR work for big charity foundations, right? Generally, no big difference. It's the same work, but it's huge new market. No, so you understand. And I think it's also important to celebrate some achievements, because when you like a perfectionist in some issues, you said to your team, "Oh, you must work more, you must more." But if you do like some great job or some big projects, it's very important to give additional bonus to people, and also maybe in future to take these people to partnership. So when they have share in your company, because it gives more motivation and these people not moving forward. Because let's be honest, like working with C group, it's maybe not so exciting as work for Amazon as PR person, right? But if you give like some person like percentage also, or more also money motivation and more challenges, maybe working in C group will be more exciting than in Amazon, right? So I have a lot of problems that people who do international work for our company, they move to huge international companies because generally it's more benefits and a little more income. But some people stay because for them this work, there they one of thousands, and here they like do very unique work and they see results of their work. So it's very important also to celebrate results, but not only, oh, we want to like have 5 big clients, but we have only 3 big clients. So 3 big clients is great. So it's also a question of your life perception generally, to see like bad things or to see positive things. And it's not only in consulting work, it's generally about your mood. And if you see like good things, it's also like helping your team to moving forward.
Okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. Like switch it up, you get into a new market, do a little bit something to freshen things up. Okay.
Right, right.
And just how was, working in the United States? What was the first place? Do you remember the first place you visited in the US and how was that experience? And
I think like first contract I did in the United States 7 years before.
okay.
And yeah, so I think it was date when, I think it was Trump inauguration.
Mm,
I think so. Yeah. So I was invited by, so I do some political lobbying and media work for clients. So we organize generally like, we work in the National Press Club. So we organize like media events, we working on reports, and it was not very hard work, but like we worked several months on that. And I remember that I also firstly, I was invited to like some zone in inauguration. So it was like kind of interesting,
yeah.
interesting for me. And also for sure, I was surprised, that generally for the same money you can have much more result in working on press here in United States than, for example, in Ukraine. No, I mean, if we count by one mention, right? So if you spend, for example, $50,000 to campaign in Ukraine, it mostly will be like earn media about your company. But if you spend the same amount of money to classical PR work, to work in these press releases, to work in these influencers, to pitch journalists, you will have maybe 20 times more result for your company if you have interesting story, right? And on undeveloped market, it don't work the same, because when they say, okay, you like businessman, if you not do something very, very unique, right? So it's you take like less result for the same money. So it's big difference between developed media market and not developed media market for sure. So yeah, and other, it's all strict regulations on foreign agents registration. So it's also was kind of challenging, but when you do it several times, it's like no problem. And people from our region sometimes, they afraid to do FARA registration because they're afraid to be foreign agents. But generally, it's okay, and it's also a question of additional education work to moving these services forward. And it's typical for all Eastern Europe, like that.
Okay. And so if someone was trying to get into the service-based industry and have a company similar to yours in the communications field, what advice would you give them? Almost kind of like what advice would you give yourself if you were just starting out, you know?
No, I think that you must be also good example, because no, when you do PR work, you must work on your own PR, right?
Right.
So because some companies, they said that okay, we can do perfectly good like campaign for you, but they haven't any cases to show. And when you like Google them or ask like some publications and information about them, it's like nothing. But or they said, oh, I have like Yale certification, or I graduate from Harvard, so I'm good because I'm graduate from Harvard. Okay, you can work with other graduates from Harvard, but maybe it's not argument for people. People want to see result, right? So of course, in government relations, you can't show so direct results. You can explain some cases, but usually it's also like under all this confidentiality and other stuff, so you can't talk a lot about that, right? But about you and your practices, you can like speak a lot. So, and it's one more question: if you haven't these practices and you're young professional, what to do? So my also advice to do some pro bono work, like advocacy work. And with this pro bono work, you can have really huge cases. You can go to like no, for example, Congressman Raskin, like from Democratic Party from Maryland, he do a lot of stuff like for helping Ukraine. So generally, you can come to volunteer and to help some issues, like to work with Ukraine, and this will be generally your case, right? Or in our situation, we start to create community like International Government Affairs Professionals Association and educational projects of Institute for Democracy and Development. So we sponsored that because it's also explanation to people what they can buy, because sometimes they don't understand why they need that, what the services. Even in United States, if you work with like middle business or small business, which like small business in United States is big business in Lithuania. No, you understand, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's also good to have very direct package what you propose, very direct. So not only, oh, we want to buy PR work. PR work can cost like $1,000. PR work can cost $3 million, right? So, and you must have direct package for every like typical client. So for example, I have direct package for new politician. They can take all package, they can take like part of package, but it's some point of cooperation. Because other way, people, even who have money, who's businessmen, they generally haven't any understanding what is like media work. And you must explain, hey, if you want to be like on Yahoo News, we can do it for you, this for you, right? So we can do press release about, I don't know, that your honey is the most like organic honey because, or some story about your honey making, right? Or I don't know, we can represent report of your non-profit to press, and then we can like pitch maybe like think tanks to also move you and your report to some bigger corporation. So it's more like, so it's also educational work all the time. But if you haven't cases, and if you haven't your own example, it's very hard to move clients forward. Yeah, and it's also, you must understand that sometimes it takes time. So, and if you, all people want to work with like big clients, but you must start with like small clients, you know.
Right.
And on every market, like I'm also want to, if I work with like Ukraine International Airlines, it's not mean that I will definitely next year work with United, right? Because you know United have like other people to work, but I can work with like Wizz Air from Europe, like yeah, on maybe their relationship with like European Commission on government relations issues. Or if I work in Bulgaria, I definitely can show this case to Lithuanian clients. So and you know it's more like public information, but people must trust you. And of course, also it's very important when you work with person to write on the paper what they expect.
Right.
Because sometimes people said, "Oh, I want to 500 publications about me," but better to say, "Hey, like let's start from like 3 publications, and if the story will be like interesting, you can pay me more if we will do more." And it must be very understandable for clients, because generally I see a lot of like problems, and I work internationally, so I felt that like much more when people don't understand outcome and result. In government relations, it's harder because it's legislation, and you never can predict the parliament on some country will vote that or no, or like structures, ministries, like in departments, it's harder. But in PR work, you must say that, hey guys, it will be one release, it will be like 200 speeches potentially of this release, and maybe like we will try to organize like 2 interviews for you. If it's talk here, it's contract for like 2 months for this scope of work, and like person will understand what they expect. And one more tip I propose, I think that it must be less less in your contract, and if you do more, client will appreciate that, but not in other direction.
Under promise, over deliver.
Yes,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, and that's a very good tip about doing the pro bono work, because I see, especially on the internet, a lot of comments in the marketing and like communications fields, especially. I see people saying, "Oh, well, this job requires 2 years of experience, but and it's my first job, but I have no experience. So how do I get the job to get the experience to get it?" You know what I mean? So people are just kind of stuck. But yeah, that's a great point. And sometimes people aren't willing to do the work for free. But I think, yeah, I agree. It's, you definitely have to in the beginning.
Yeah, but you can also, if you go to some scholarship and internship, it even will be not for free. So I know that Atlantic Council and Hudson Institute and SEPA, they have something like programs for interns for 3 months. They even pay like some minimum wage. So, but it's like think tank work. And one more time, don't afraid, because you don't go to work for free in like grocery store, right? You go to work for free in like, I don't know, some campaign for some person who want to be in the Senate. So you also, like for this your work hours, you also buy connections. And
Yeah.
at the end of the day, generally these people will prefer to work with their volunteers, right, than with somebody else. And the same with you always can advocate for something in your community. And if you're really passionate in helping like kids or working with food banks, you can do that because if you're really passionate about that. But of course, it must correlate with your like understanding what you want to do. Because if you want to work for non-profits, it must be non-profit work, right? So it's and some type of non-profit work. So it depends, but try. As volunteers, you also haven't so much responsibility.
Right. And in your personal opinion, if there are any examples you could think of, what are, some good examples of a political campaign and some bad examples of what not to do?
From perspective of consulting company or from perspective of candidate?
I guess of the candidate and just, I guess, the end results, like the outcome where you've seen a campaign just go very wrong. I could be both, could be either the candidate's fault or but just, yeah.
It's usually easier to talk about candidates because mostly it's a problem when candidates try to do campaign management by themselves.
Mm.
And they said that, oh, I and my wife know better what advertising we must use. We don't need research. I like this photo because my wife likes this photo, right? So to move personal opinion, and some like consulting company said that, oh great, like no problem, you pay to us money. If your wife likes this photo, we will use this photo. But focus groups can say that, oh no, in this photo he looks like a person with, I don't know, kidney disease. So we must rely on focus groups, but not the opinion of like somebody very close. And sometimes it exists even on the high level campaign, and even on United States like level presidential campaign. You know what candidate I'm talking about, right? Who have his personal opinion on every question.
Right.
So that's why I think it's a lot of like tips and like do's and don'ts on election campaign. But I think that like you must rely on numbers and research, but not to personal opinion. It's very important stuff. And secondly, it's also, which we mentioned on election campaign, is much more harder also to write in your consulting agreement what directly you like your responsibility. Because otherwise, sometimes candidates expect from your team a lot of work. So, for example, you work on like strategy, but candidate said that, oh, can you help to like other part of team to create message boxes? Or can you help the PR team to like write pitches? And it will be 3 times more work and work hours than you expect. And also minus and like cons that some consulting companies said, yes, of course, we will help you with that. We'll help you with that. So they try to move to this, like, I don't know, 60 work hours of their team, all this work, and quality of this work, it's so, So that's why it's better to concentrate and say, okay, like this we can do, or let's like move our agreements like more, but it's very typical not for like it's more typical for campaign for some city manager, right? So where it's also personal relationship, because campaign manager for like Mr. Green for mayor of like some small town in, I don't know, Louisiana. It's very different between candidates who try to involve like DC companies to organize like consulting. Oh, and one more. It's very important. It's when teams don't work together. When like Mississippi team not work together with DC team of candidate. So it's big problem. And it's big problem also in Eastern Europe when candidates involve one team for branding, one team for research, one team for like creating message book, and other team for field, and they not communicate in any way. And that's why message don't move smoothly. That's why media team even can be with one message and like field team can with the other message. So and it's make your impact very low and ineffective. And this like, and sometimes it's big conflicts in teams because it's also big budget. So every team wants to take more budget to their company. And it's an issue. And sometimes it became also very personal because some team want to be with candidate more. It's an issue. Yeah.
Mm, okay, okay. And so just last question to just wrap this up, because we are getting close to our time limit. But I think we've gotten a lot of great value to the audience. Just final question. If you have any predictions on what the future holds in terms of the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, if you have any thoughts or opinions on it, or what you think maybe the final outcome is going to look like, or what you could see this turning into.
Oh, look, I understand some like issues, and I can say that issues which I understand. I wrote for Wilson Center, for Atlantic Council, and I do some reports on that. But I see that it's very tough situation, and it's not situation which have solution next year. So it's what I like, because we haven't like political science discussion, but I obviously will invite you to some events which connect this issues with some other think tanks and with other think tanks for democracy and development. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your questions. It was very interesting.
Thank you. I appreciate your time as well. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.